Morning, Allan.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Very good. Thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, you do so much on this show. What are you gonna do now?
That's a good question. I mean, we wrapped in September, late September this year, so we've been adjusting. And the minute we wrapped, I got on a plane, went to Manitoba, and started shooting Paul Gross's movie. Literally, like the next day.
Yeah.
I was stopped in the Winnipeg airport, and some cool kind of civilian stopped me and said, What are you doing here? I heard you're doing this movie. You just wrapped your TV show." But
So it doesn't stop.
I want to keep. I like keeping busy, and I'm excited
That's
about
great.
the future. Yeah.
We'll talk more about the new projects in a minute. But now that this series that's been so huge in your life is wrapped, how are you feeling about that?
It's interesting. It's gonna be cool. It's gonna be weird tonight to watch the finale. I'm flying home tonight to see it. We're sitting with friends and family, and I have a feeling it's going to be like a celebration in a lot of ways, and kind of like a funeral in other ways. And it's a big chapter of our life that I'm very proud of, and I have a great deal of respect for everybody who's been working on the show with us and all of our fans. And
What about the family side? Like you mentioned, you'll be watching it with your family. What's it meant for them?
You gotta know my family. My mother, who's about 5'2" and used to be a nun, and she's sweetest little thing, has been a background performer over the years. And my father's been working on the series. My brother's a composer, so he's been composing on the show. So in a lot of ways, it has been a family affair. It's weird to be in your professional setting, like working in your job, and look up and see or hear your father's voice in the background.
Right.
Knowing you could always get a kick in the arse from your father, even at work, it's very strange.
That's a dynamic on screen, but is that what it's like off too? Like with your real dad?
With my real dad, yeah, that's kind of certainly based on Perry Chafe, who's a co-showrunner and creative force with me on the show. Both of us certainly stole from our own experiences with our own parents, siblings, and all of our, like Allan Doyle, we've stolen all of Allan Doyle's stories and put them in the series and built the dynamics. We were like vampires for 7 years, stealing everyone around us, all of their life experiences.
So I read that, part of the inspiration for the series came from watching Rockford Files with your dad.
Sure.
Right. So what was it about that experience that sort of stirred something in you?
Well, my old man is he's a very sweet, and he's a tough and grumble guy, but he's actually a super teddy bear. And my mother, they're both very supportive. We spent a lot of time together, fishing and hunting and doing all that kind of
Nice.
regular father-son stuff, and hockey, and but we used to watch TV together a lot. And Perry, Rob, Blackie, John Vatcher, and I, we were all fans of the era of the 80s, those nostalgic 80s kind of cop shows. And I felt like there was a real resurgence of procedural cop shows that came out in the late 90s and early 2000s, but no one had properly, I felt like, tackled the PI genre. No one had really kind of opened that wide open, and I felt like there was an opportunity for it. And there we were.
And you did it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And was part of it to maybe give something for a new generation of families to bond over?
You hope, right? But you can never assume that it's going to hit the way it hits. But I travel across the country, and I see the people that are, that have been touched by the show and enjoyed. And I just talked to someone today downstairs. His daughter, who's 14, and it's a family thing. They all watch the show together, and that's something that I'll never let go of. That we were able to sort of make that kind of impact is special.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's cool. You hope something like that happens, but you can never assume.
Right. So you had this vision of, getting back to the PI genre. How well do you think you realized how well do you think you succeeded in realizing that vision that you had?
I think it became its own entity, and it formed into something else. And in the beginning stages of the show, we were playing with tone as we were developing it, and we were learning so much. We were so green, made so many mistakes, and achieved so much with knowing so little in a lot of ways. And I think that's part of the ride, is learning as you go. And the show starts to inform you very quickly.
Right.
The characters start to inform you, and your audience does. So your audience, we have diehard, dyed-in-the-wool, fans of Republic of Doyle from across the entire country. And the support of our home province was integral, because I feel like we had to get that part of it right first. We
Right.
had to get the we're representing our province and our people and our cultural identity in a way while still playing with this PI kind of genre
Yeah.
thing. And I feel like people really got on board quickly, and without them, we'd have not achieved anything.
Right. So you mentioned tone there. This is a crime series. It's a dramedy, though. So it doesn't
Yeah.
really go into the super dark territory that you might see on something like True Detective.
Right.
When did you figure that out, that maybe there weren't going to be lines that you were going to cross and you were going to keep it on the certain level that you did?
That kind of almost immediately. It's funny because television has evolved in the last 7 years since we started making this show within our own country. Our industry in this country is on fire. We're making amazing quality television in a
Right.
way that we never have before. And I think that was inevitable. We're a new industry. America has 40, 50, 60 years on us. England has a lot more in terms of creating a cultural storytelling identity. And in the last 7 years, things of television viewing has changed so much. And it's like our show, in a lot of ways, Perry and I wanted to make a really dark, visceral cable
Really?
drama. Yeah, sure. And at that time, CBC was going in two different directions with their drama. They were doing a serialized kind of more heavy approach, and they were also trying episodic, typical quote unquote network television. And we went in the road with the network television because we felt like that's what the show was asking for. Our first episode, which it ended up being episode 3, was way darker, dead girl, super visceral sex scenes, like much more dark. But it wasn't the right tone for the show, and it just kind of informed us when we were putting the cuts together. We're like, no, episode 5.
You made that call in the editing room
It just
before it
kind
even came out.
yeah, I mean, you had to. Yeah, it was what it was. But by episode 5 of season 1, it was very clear what path we were on. It was a romp show filled with enjoyment and hoping that people would tune in for that hour or 2 hours tonight and enjoy themselves.
Yeah. Well, speaking of enjoying things, I think it's fair to say that you're a bit of a sex symbol in this series, right? Like
No, you're a sex symbol.
Yeah, that's right. No, the leather jacket, the action scenes, right? There's a scene in the opening credits where you got your shirt off. You're looking pretty shredded,
Right.
right? Is that something that you embraced, or did you have any sort of reticence about stepping into that role?
Of course, it's ridiculous. But the idea of you saying that I'm a sex symbol is just ludicrous. It's my job, right? It's your job as an actor to play the part that you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
Before I started Republic of Doyle, I was not in the shape I was in. And I had never played a part like Jake Doyle before, ever. I had never played anything close to it. And it was a great dream of mine to play a part like him because there's so much in that character, and I love him so much. But you got to look the part, right? That's part of my job. So I had to get in shape. My partners, we did the first pilot, which was
Right.
a half hour. I was way out of shape. I had long hair. I looked like I was wearing a wig. I had like terrible clothes. And my partners were like, dude, you got to get in shape. Like, you can't be the lead in the
Right.
series unless you're going in the Cracker, that great series, the Robbie Coltrane series, Cracker.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're going in that direction, you got to pick one or the other. So we went with the guy who's the lead of the series thing. So you
Yeah.
follow through with that, and you do.
But
it
you're
again.
also the show creator, though, right?
Right.
So is there a part of it that's like, well, I guess I'll write myself into being the guy with the GTO and the
Yeah,
leather
absolutely.
jacket and stuff like that?
Sure, as a kid dream, Jim Rockford flying around in that car. You want, I don't know if it was as, I don't know if it certainly wasn't arbitrary, but I didn't set out and have a checklist of things that I wanted to be able to have with this character. It just kind of, Perry's a big, Jake Doyle is a lot of us in terms of those who created the show, and ultimately he became mine. But a lot of the dialogue over the years, when I do a pass on a script before we start shooting, I often cut all of Jake's lines out, and because you have so many other characters you have to feed. And then Perry would take the script back and then start putting Jake plots back in there. Jake became, in a lot of ways, Perry was the largest advocate for what Jake's ambition was and his drive. So it was John Vatcher picked the car. Al McGee, who was our executive, he's an amazing television guy, and he really was an advocate for us having a proper car for our hero.
Right.
The CBC were like, he needs to have the right jacket. Like there was a lot of hands, a lot of cooks in the kitchen in the creation of this show, and Sally Cato, Helen Asimakis, they were like instrumental in forming. When I first brought the idea to CBC, Jake wasn't even the lead, but Sally really pushed that it be the Jake and Malachi show. In the beginning, it was kind of like Christian, the brother, was the lead.
Right.
Because in a lot of ways, I felt like it wasn't right to present myself as the character who was going to be the lead in the series. And with time, I didn't know if I could write it and do all the things I had to do and be in every scene. But the CBC helped us form that. It was a fantastic partnership.
Well, there's a certain humility in what you're talking about, but like at some point, you had to kind of get over that reluctance. When did you make that call? Or when did you make that decision?
Once you start, you realize that there's no time for debate anymore. You got to pick it and go. And you only got one shot. And you make decisions. Some of them are awesome. Some of them are terrible. You got to live with them and you got to go with it. A lot of relationships didn't turn out to be the way they should, and a lot of regrets. And also at the same time, we just did our best to make the show.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So Republic of Doyle is such a big part of life in Newfoundland and Labrador. What's it meant to you to have it resonate that much in the place that you're from?
So it's extremely overwhelming, and I don't even know how to explain how appreciative I am for that. Because without them, they would nationally, it's a really well received show, and it's in a lot of people's hearts, and I'm so grateful. And I know that wouldn't have been possible without the people of Newfoundland feeling like, and Labrador, that the province, or at least the capital city, was represented, and the way we are there is represented in an authentic way. And if we hadn't achieved that, I think we would have been hung.
Yeah, but it shows, I think, maybe more to St. John's than you see in the tourism ads, right? Like it shows like maybe a wealthier side as well. It shows a seedier side. What was it that you really wanted to draw out to share with the rest of the country?
Around the time that we started making the show, there was a lot of stereotypes that I'm not comfortable with out there. Everybody, any sort of unique group in this country has their own sort of version of this, right? And we were like Allan Doyle and Great Big Sea started this, and Rick Mercer, and Seamus O'Regan started the "We're Not Newfies" campaign, kind of, like it's like we're done with being we're extremely open to the joke, but it's like we need to be a part of it. And I kind of wanted to move away from the fact that the sort of the stereotypes that were being presented, and show us as an international cosmopolitan city, even though it's only 150,000 people. Yeah. But I wanted it
more nuanced.
That's the way I felt about it. Now, not every scene needs to steal a line from Sean McGinley. Not every scene needed to have a cappuccino machine in it. That's what he says about happened in Dublin in the 90s. But it's like it didn't need to be all about toothless, stereotypes of people who were doing this, that, or the other thing. I wanted it to be, this is like paint a picture of the way Perry, Rob, and John and I see the city, and the city we love so much that, we never want to leave it.
Yeah. And what is it that makes you never want to leave it?
I don't know. You'd have to ask anybody who goes there. For me, I feel like the people there are just unbelievable. And our history, we are an old province. We're the first settlements in North America from the Europeans. It's like there's a history there with the town. There's some good parts of their history and some not so good parts, but it's formed who we are as a people, and they're just amazing. I love being home.
Right. Do you ever feel the pull of Hollywood?
Yeah, you get pressure in some instances to pursue that angle. Over the years, I've always had that. But the funny thing, I never, every year when everybody went to pilot season in LA, I always went to St. John's when I was living in Toronto.
Why was that important for you?
I just wanted to go home and shovel snow, I didn't want to be a tourist.
Do you think your career's ever suffered, or, you've missed out on things because of that?
I'd be a bit of a tool if I was worrying about what I didn't achieve in my career. I'm sitting here talking about the finale of a 6-year show that we created, and I had one of the best experiences of my entire life on this. So I feel so grateful for this opportunity, for this industry allowing me to have this opportunity. What a great industry we have in this country.
It's a great attitude.
It's true.
Yeah.
There's very few tools in the Canadian film and television industry, and those that are big morons, they have there's a massive blinking sign above their head and an arrow pointing to them saying, "Don't mind him, he's a tool." You know what I mean? It's like it's just such a generous, great group of
checking
people.
behind my
No,
head
you have no such signs, sir.
Okay. But when you talk about industry, one of the things that you've been really good at is sort of really helping to foster an industry like that back home. Is there a concern that, with Republic of Doyle coming to an end, that maybe, that's going to suffer, the industry will?
Yeah, I mean, there's always it would be a lot of pressure that you could put on yourself in that regard. And certainly we didn't make the decision to end the series without considering that, but there's other great producers in St. John's. There's, Paul Pope, there's Barbara Dorn, Mary Sexton, who were they were creating the industry there long before we came along.
But you've got a new series, or a new project rather, that is going to be set in Newfoundland as well.
Yeah, well, Take the Shot Productions is our company.
Yeah.
We have something like 6 different projects in development right now with different networks across the country. We have 20, Perry Chafe is working on 20 different shows that we're fostering. And, not everything will be produced in Newfoundland, but we're based there. I mean, we want to shoot in Toronto. We want to shoot in BC, in America. We're working very closely with lots of people in the U.S., like Brad Payton, who's the director of San Andreas. I saw the trailer for that today. It's fantastic. Gander Boy, shooting a $150 million movie with The Rock. Like the Newfoundland mafia spreads across the industry far and wide. So we're not done yet. This is just a slight act break, and I just hope people who followed the show or have ever kind of had a piece of the show in their mind tune in tonight. It's an hour earlier tonight for the 2 hours.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and best of luck.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for the chat.
Awesome.
Cheers.
For the last 6 seasons, he has starred as Jake in Republic of Doyle. That's Allan Hawco. The final episode airs tonight on CBC TV. Allan Hawco has been with me live in Studio Q.